What is up, YouTube? So today we are going to be rendering down deer fat into tallow. My son killed a nice 8-point buck this year. It was a mature deer, and he was covered in a thick layer of fat. And so when I was quartering that deer down, I trimmed all the fat off and put it in a box, and I had that box in the refrigerator until today. And now we are going to be getting into the process of turning that into something usable. Tallow. Here we go. All right, so the next step is to try and clean as much of the meat off this as possible. But like as you can see, this deer was just covered in a thick layer of fat, and this fat was like perfect for rendering. So that's what we got going on. Just gonna try and clean as much of this meat off as possible, and then we'll be chunking it up into like 1-inch chunks before we put it in the pot with some water. Nice big chunks here. That's what you want. This deer it was such a old mature buck that he was just covered in a layer of this, and it was really easy to trim off. It depends, what you're going to be using it for, on how far you try and render this down. If you're going to be using it for skincare, to make skincare products, you'd want to do probably a second rendering to try and get all of the impurities out of it. But if you're just using it for cooking, then this would be adequate. And that's what we're doing here today. We're just trying to get the first rendering done, and then if my wife would want to try some for skincare products, we can always pull a jar and render it down even further, and then try and get it into a form that she can use it for that. So yeah, so it's just a matter of trying to get all of this meat off as possible. Now, I've killed other whitetails that didn't have near as much fat on them like this, and it would be quite the task to try and do this with a smaller animal. But these big mature bucks have a pretty good layer of fat on them, and so, like I said, it's just a matter of trying to respect the animal and get as much out of it as absolutely possible. If anything, it requires a little bit of work, but I think that the finished product will be worth it here. But like these big hunks of fat like this that I pulled off this animal. And it just was easy to harvest, so I did, and this is the next step, cleaning it up. So this is actually my first time doing this as well, but it seemed like a pretty simple process, just a little bit of work, just like anything else, so decided to give it a go. And I thought, while we're at it, might as well make a video on it, just in case somebody else decides they'd like to try and do the same. It seems very simple from what I've read about it. Alright, so we have it now all cleaned up the best we can get it, and now we're just chunking it down into like 1-inch chunks to get it ready for the pot. Like, look at this nice, big, thick slab. I mean, that's a giant slab of fat. That would be a shame to waste that. And so, yeah, I mean, if you happen to take a big whitetail buck, just do this extra step here, and what you will get from it is a healthy alternative, cooking oil that you can use in the kitchen. And like I said, there's many other things that you can do with it. I may even do a second rendering on a jar of this to render it down even further, and then possibly make some, give some to my wife to see what she thinks about it for skincare, and I might try and make some beard oil with it, see how that turns out. So that might be a next video coming up here, a little beard oil video out of deer tallow. How's that sound? Basically, just if you were gonna do this to make some type of skincare product, or like if I was to make some beard oil out of this, this would just be your carrier oil, and then you would add some essential oils to it to give it a nice scent. But I'm sure that it has all kinds of benefits in terms of skin care. Just a big believer that you cannot go wrong with these natural things. I mean, in my opinion, they are the best. I mean, if you could use something like this, for your skincare, and not use chemically laced products, that are mass produced, I would say this is definitely a better alternative. And like I said, you've taken this animal for its meat, but it's just this one extra step to also utilize its fat. And then it has obviously many purposes. And I mean, back in the day, the woodsmen and the frontiersmen of old, they would have never allowed something like this to go to waste. And I just think now in the modern era, we are so strapped with time, always in a hurry, and so things like this we just don't utilize, and we really should. We really should. We need to try and slow down. Slow down. I know life is hectic and fast-paced, but sometimes you need to just slow down. Take the wheel. And embrace these natural ways. We have sacrificed so much in the name of convenience, and much of it to our own detriment, unfortunately. As far as fast food and just technology, really. I mean, it's with everything. I mean, if you look at all areas where there are obvious struggles in life, it's typically where we have given up some natural process in exchange for convenience. And I don't know, I see that repeating pattern in a lot of different things. And that sucks. And it would be great to get back to the old ways, but unfortunately, that's harder and harder to do today because you are being taken into the future, whether you want to go there or not. And it seems that their plans for the future do not involve stepping back in time. But look at that, these nice big slabs of fat. So I was out, little story here while I'm doing this. So we are on the downside of the peak rut here where I'm at. And I think the peak rut was literally like over the weekend, towards the end of last week, and over the weekend was the peak of the rut. And I think now that we are over that peak and we're on the downhill side of it. But anyway, last year we shed hunt. It's one of our favorite, at least one of my favorite hobbies to do in the winter. But anyway, I found this massive set, and so I know that buck somewhere in that area, and I've been hunting it every opportunity that I can this year. I've been trying to get in there and hunt, and this morning I only had a little bit of time, so I went out for like the first couple hours, and I was just kind of sneak hunting. I'd walk a little bit, stop, grunt, do a little calling, sit there, listen, wait like 10, 15 minutes, and then move on. And I'm pushing into this big bull, and it's surrounded by pines, and I use the pines to get into this, bull. You can kind of sneak through these pines, and I'm pressing in these pines, but I'm like stopping every so often and calling and just sitting there. And so I get through these pines and I press into this bull, and I wanted to try and get to the top of this bull, and I didn't. I just stayed tucked into the pines, and I was calling. And then sure enough, I look up at the top of that bull where I wanted to head, and I see a deer walk out across there. Now, I never seen its head, but I seen its body, and I could tell it was a big deer. So I get tucked in under a pine tree, and I'm grunting, and I'm waiting and watching out there. And then all of a sudden, I look to my right, and I see something pop out of the laurel, and I'm sitting there looking like, is that a horn? And then all of a sudden, here he comes. He just steps out, and I'm telling you, this buck, just a giant, heavy, creamy orange horned buck, just a massive giant whitetail, steps out. He's at 50 yards, and I start grunting, and I stopped him 5 times with the grunt, but he just would not come to me. And I didn't want to try and take a 50-yard shot at him. I probably could have, but I wanted to try and get him closer. And I thought every time I grunted and got him to stop, I thought he was going to come, but then he just kept walking. And next thing you know, he's in those pines and he's walking right where I just came from. So if I would have just sat in that initial spot that I was in before I pressed in to the bottom of that bowl, he would have literally like walked right into my lap this morning. So needless to say, I was absolutely disgusted, sick to my stomach. I mean, this buck was a buck of a lifetime. I mean, just an absolute giant. I actually think I might have his horns. I'll show them to you here quick. And keep in mind that this buck is bigger this year. But look at the mass on this buck. And this is how the one was this morning. Just, I mean, that's my hand. This buck, I feel like it was him. He walked to my right, so like this is the side I was looking at, and he was heavy like this. If this wasn't him, there's another one. I didn't find the set, but me and my youngest son found the single shed, and you can tell they're in the same family. They're related. I think this is Grandpa, and the other one is Pa. It might have been him. I don't know. I mean, the other buck, I'm not sure where the horn's at that we got the single of. It was in the same area, and he's also a hog, real heavy, not quite as big as this, but close. And it was one of those two bucks, I think, because this is what I'm after right here, and so I've been in that area. So yeah, like I said, needless to say, a little bit disgusted this morning. And I don't know. I could tell he wasn't coming, and so my last ditch effort was a snort wheeze, and I think it actually spooked him, because I started to belly crawl to try and get a little bit closer, because he was literally in open pines. I mean, it would have been so easy to get a shot off at him if I could have just, split the difference with him or whatever, and I don't know what happened to him. He just disappeared. So I think that snort wheeze kind of spooked him out of there. And so I just immediately pulled out. I got out of there, and I didn't want to disrupt him any more than what I already had. And I'm really hoping that he'll be back in there here the next couple days, because we are at the tail end of archery season here where I'm at. I believe Sunday is the last day. My oldest son, I'm still trying to get him a buck. He's my top priority right now, but he's already missed a couple days of school to hunt with me, and he'll be hunting with me Saturday and Sunday. And I've just been going out myself just briefly for a couple hours in the morning, in that area, hoping I can run into this buck like I did this morning, but it just didn't pan out. So, yeah. That's my little pity party story of the day. Sucks, man. If you're a hunter and you've ever experienced that, you know that feeling. He's literally right there. Perfect, like broadside shot, perfect, open, just perfect, just a little bit too far. And that's the heartache of bow hunting. But it is what it is. Gonna give it hell here this weekend with my son, and hopefully I can put him on him. I'd love to see him kill the buck. My youngest son actually killed a hog 8-point. This is that buck, and so my older son's a little jealous, but hopefully I can put him on one this weekend. I'd love to see him kill a giant too, and then I'll be having to fork out couple thousand in taxidermy if that happens this year, but it's well worth it. The memory with my younger son with this big buck he killed, it was actually his first deer, and he laid an absolute perfect shot and smoked this big mature 8-point off our own property here. He was the biggest buck that we had on camera this year. Got a lot of nice photos of him, and my younger son was able to connect on him right at the peak of the rut there, just grunting and wrestling some leaves, and here he come right in 10 yards, and he smoked him. It was absolutely perfect. And you know, those memories are what we live for as fathers and hunters. And yeah, so really hoping I can get my oldest son, get his tag filled too, but if not, we have rifle season. But the problem with that is before then we have bear season, and when bear season comes in, it completely changes everything, because you got everybody out there putting drives on and rifles going off. And so the bucks, this stage here where you catch them being stupid and up on these tops out in the open, and you know, some situations that just doesn't happen very often in rifle season. They're typically down over the side hills, and you know, they're in hideout mode come rifle season. So it's a whole different ball game. But we're gonna stay after them, and hopefully we will connect with them. And if I do, you'll be sure to know. Anyway, now we're moving on to the next stage of this process, which is transferring this into the pot. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that ready, and we'll go from there next. All right, so now we're at the stage where we need to transfer all this cut up fat that we got into our pot. And this is a long, slow process from here. From what I've read, it's like a cup of water per pound of fat, and I didn't measure it, but I'm going to say that what I have here is probably, I'm guessing, a couple of pounds. But anyway, the main thing is to make sure you don't want to have a bunch of water in there, just enough to cover the bottom of the pan with like a ½ inch of water. So not sure exactly what that'll equate to here, but that's what you're trying to achieve. So we're gonna go ahead and add water here. So I'm going to stick with 2 cups here to see how that pans out. Maybe just a little bit more than that. We'll add 1 more cup in here, we'll see. So that would be we're gonna go with that. That's 3 cups for, you know, that big pile, whatever that was. And so now the next step here, yeah, so anyway, we're trying to bring this, trying to get this up to a light boil, and then immediately reduce the heat down to low, and then it's just a long, slow process from here. From what I've read, it can take up to like 12 hours, so we'll just keep checking in periodically on it. And I'm not sure how this will smell, but if it begins to smell up my kitchen, I'm gonna transfer it out onto the grill and just do it with the burner on the side of the grill outside to try and stay away from any smelly stuff in the house here. But I'm not sure how that'll go. We'll just have to kind of see once we get cooking here and move from there. Once this gets heated up here, I am gonna add just a little bit of Redmond salt to it, and the salt will help pull out, any impurities. Smell to it. I can kind of smell it already. So this might be something that you want to do outside. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I can smell it a little bit. And I just don't want to stink up my house and have my wife bitching at me later. So we might end up just transferring this outside and doing it on the grill. Here, I'm gonna try and get it heated up. Things are starting to happen in there, so alright, so it's starting to heat up. See things happening here a little bit, so we're gonna go ahead and add some Redmond salt, and this will help pull out any impurities during the process. So go with that. Yeah, I think we might transfer this outside. I mean, it's not terrible, but I have a feeling if it's going to be a long process, like if this ends up taking, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever, it might have my house smelling pretty rank. So I think maybe when you do this, if you have the ability to do it outside, that's probably what I'd recommend. I mean, it's not terrible. It might actually be all right because at first you're trying to get it heated up, and then so that initial burst of smell came off. I think from it getting super hot, super quick. Now that I've lowered the temperature and it's just on low, which is where it's going to be for the remainder of the process, it doesn't seem to be putting off too much of a smell or much, there just isn't a whole lot coming off of it. So also, I just don't know if it is going to put like an oily sheen on everything that's in here. I think I'm gonna get ready and take it outside. This would be safe. Alright, so I'm gonna think I'm going to go ahead and transfer this process outside on the grill. So I'm going to go out and see about getting that ready, and we'll go from there. Well, we tried. Turns out it's too windy out there today to be doing that outside, unfortunately. Couldn't get the boiler or the burner at a low enough temp without the flame continually going out because of it being so windy out there today. So I guess we're just gonna have to suffer through here. Hopefully we don't end up with a thick film of grease and stench throughout my house, or I will be in trouble when my wife gets home. I mean, it doesn't really have a bad smell, honestly, but I'm a little stuffy as well right now, so I'm not sure I'm actually picking it up. So anyway, now that's it. That's the process. Now it's just a waiting game, so it's a matter of just continuing to keep an eye on it, continually, like, stirring it occasionally and just keeping an eye on it. And then once it's all rendered down, then you transfer that from the pot into like mason jars, or preferably some high heat, something that's compatible with high heat. Like, I'm gonna use mason jars. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do as far as transferring it into them. And then this is shelf stable for a couple months and up to a year in the refrigerator. So we'll see how much we end up getting out of this. If we end up getting multiple jars, I'll probably just keep them. Honestly, I'll probably just throw lids on them and keep them in the fridge. I'll just probably just keep them in there, and then whenever we want to use it, it's there. You just grab it, and use it. So I'll see if I can record that part of the process as well, but I'm not sure I will be able to, just because of timing here later. But if not, from here it's just a matter of keeping an eye on it, cooking it down very slowly. It's rendering is the process, so if you look into that a little bit, you'll figure out what you need to do there. But you're just rendering this down, and once you get it to where you want it, you just transfer it into mason jars, and you want to do that through like a strainer with a cheesecloth, or if you don't have that, you can also use like a coffee filter or something, just something to strain it through, to get it into the jar, to try and get any of the solids out of it. So that's pretty much it. That's the process. Hopefully you learned something today. I know I did. This is my first time doing this, and honestly it wasn't that bad. So in the future, when we take these animals, if they have a big layer of fat on them like that buck did, I'm most certainly gonna get it and render it down and make tallow out of it. And again, I think that's all part of being a responsible hunter and respecting the animals and trying to utilize every aspect that we can of the harvest. So that's what we did today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe, like, and share. It's a new channel. It really takes a lot to try and grab some traction here. It's a slow process, so I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe, and I will continue bringing you similar content. So thank you. See you in the next one. Casper is out. So this is what we're looking at about the 4-hour mark, and I think that this is probably going to be all of 12 hours if this fat is all supposed to be melted down. So not quite halfway there yet, but getting there. This is what we're down to. All that fat for that. looks like that's going to be a little bit of a slow process. So the coffee filter wasn't really working out, so we switched over to the cheesecloth. That's much better. And yeah, not looking like we're going to get much. There's not much left in the pan. Slowly going it all out. And that's about all we got. But it was worth it.